and we're actually coming to you live from the Pacific. We're focused on a digital world town hall meeting as well as a ripple effect. We're grateful for those that are in attendance. We've got them in multiple different rooms from multiple different parts of the country and world. And we'll spend the first part basically giving you an update on the advancements within different cultures and nations within the Pacific, and then just format into any kind of general Q&A that you might have. So for those of you that are not aware, the digital world is an ecosystem that focuses on decentralized technologies to enable certain parts of the world to come together. And they basically break into the individual owning their own identity and privacy first. And then it can tie into maybe the individuals want to start businesses or trusts or DAOs or councils. And then it ties into countries. And what we're focused on primarily over the last 3 months has been different countries. And you'll see different countries that have been the focal point here. So you'll notice that majority of them are actually in the Pacific. And then there's a secondary phase that's also an approach. But we're working directly with governments. And the governments particularly may have a forte. So for instance, some of these first ones that we've been working with, Tuvalu, they have a particular forte within, maybe around identity and really taking all of their systems from what we would call a analog process to a digital process. So currently they use different registries around how identity is managed, how driver's licenses are managed. Passports are a little different entity because it ties into some centralized systems, but the other ones, like even vehicle registrations and other things, majority of them are actually what we would call an analog process, where there's actually a book that has a registry. It's not something that we historically use, or at least for the last decade plus, where you've got centralized databases that actually are digital where you can search them. And so we believe that that is a wonderful country. It's a country that's known as one of the least traveled countries, and as well as one of the countries that will actually disappear as global warming continues to be a concern around the world. So literally they have islands that are disappearing, and it's projected by 2050 that they'll actually be underwater. It's been a very humbling experience to meet some of the folks in that part of the world and get to know them. These are some of the services that are initially focusing on. First off, they're the first digital nation, and we're working through different areas, namely around passports and citizenships. So taking the process into a digital process and then tying it into the current physical passport process. Also, driver's license. So maybe it's a driver's permit, maybe it's a license, and then also digital marriages. Those are the three things that we're initially focused on. So again, passports, driver's licenses, as well as marriages. These are all in a digital ecosystem. There will be different registrations. So maybe you've got a vehicle, maybe you've got a boat, maybe you've got different digital assets from digital companies can actually tie to it, and then eventually tying into payments and land management. I also believe that there's a lot of wisdom within that ecosystem, and there are people that can do things around digital disputes. Right now, we're working with a couple different satellite-based carriers. We had a meeting while we were there with SpaceX, and we actually did some testing while we were there with SpaceX as well, and they were all 100% positive. This is a country that does not have fiber. The only way to connect is through the sky, and it's absolutely working well. I believe that there's actually a bright future there as far as delivering services through these digital umbilical cords to be able to drive in revenue streams within the country that the country hasn't seen before. They're good people. Their culture is solid. Their history is solid. Their hearts are good, and they're hungry to be able to serve the rest of the world. Whereas, historically, they've just basically lived a very simple life. But at the same time, a lot of the families are broken up because they have to go to other parts of the world to actually drive revenue and then send it home. And what's sad is a lot of the money that they'll make, or value or currency or whatever you want to call it, will basically have pieces of it taken back or taken away before it gets to them. So working a lot on that, and then additional programs, and primarily just learning myself as far as how parliaments work and how different cabinets work and different ministries work and how to navigate that. There'll be a lot of different things that are happening this next week, as far as about 16, 17 different countries from the Pacific coming into the area where I'm currently based, which is in Fiji. And we'll have a meeting between the 27th and the 30th of March. Some of you say, well, that actually is going to overlap with the actual, let's see if I've got, so this event here, the Digital World Forum, starts on the 28th. So this other event is the 27th through the 30th. But for me personally, it's just too wonderful of an opportunity to be able to pass up, because we've got literally 16, 17 different countries from the Pacific all in one location. So this event's still going to kick off on the 28th. I will just join it on the 30th or 31st. So there's currently folks that are en route. If you have not signed up, you can still not too late to join. Probably getting way over the wire, but you get a clear phone, which is $1,200, as well as 15 days on the water, going to wonderful locations from Australia to New Caledonia to Vanuatu to Fiji, the Solomon Islands, excuse me, Samoa, as well as American Samoa, and then it ends up in French Polynesia, so, or Tahiti, as some know it. There'll also be some interesting things with Atutaki and Rarotonga for those that are aware of the area. And I also want to put a mention for Vanuatu. For those that are not aware, in addition to Tuvalu, we also spent a month in Vanuatu and just got to know the people. I mean, they're absolutely amazing is too small of a word. I've never seen hearts so big. I've never seen a country so tattered. And what I mean by that is, while we were there was two earthquakes, 6.6 to 6.9 on the Richter scale, as well as two cyclones. One was a category 5 and one was a category 4. Category 4 was the first one. It actually came during the day. And as according to the locals, they're not used to having them during the day. I actually got some video footage. I have 3 of my boys here with me, and we love to ride around on 4-wheelers. And so we actually just, us crazy Americans, we didn't, we took advantage of the opportunity to just experience, and we rode around on these things with GoPros. And so we haven't uploaded the footage yet, but we'll upload the footage, and you'll kind of see what a class 4 and class 5 hurricane looks like, especially a class 4 that then leaves a ton of water, and then a class 5 that's hitting. And the class 4 actually had the eye come right over us. So it was literally a dead hit right where we were. But I grew up in Florida when I was young, but I don't remember experiencing the cyclones and hurricanes in Florida. But there definitely is a shift, at least according to the people of the land here, where they're seeing weather patterns that are not common. We won't talk a lot about weather. We're basically focused on digital everything. But for those of you that know, my perspective is the earth is under attack, the family is under attack, and the individual is under attack. And we can start by giving the individual their privacy protection and own self-governance and sovereignty back by utilizing digital processes and letting governance, primarily around this declaration, which, by the way, the declaration which was taken around the world was actually left in Tuvalu. And that's very significant. It's a very important point, because it had physical signatures and fingerprints and just some real energy and effort that went into that. And it's on this little nation in the middle of the Pacific that is projected to be one of the nations to actually be enveloped by water. So as a matter of fact, there's a point where you can stand on it, and it's probably only got 30 feet from one side to the other side, where you're going raw ocean to lagoon. And it's about 1 million square miles of ocean. And the lagoon is about 18 by 10 square miles, so to speak, of kind of a special lagoon, if you will. We're also working with other parts of the world. If you pay attention to this map, you'll actually see some of them. I won't spell them out. It's too premature. But what you're looking at is basically a targeted approach around how decentralized systems that are digital can be deployed for humanity. And a lot of it is primarily because of the hearts of the people are absolutely right wouldn't be the right word. Humble wouldn't be the right word. No guile, no greed, no ego, for the most part, don't get me wrong, there's kids that are growing up, they're understanding, the basic things of the world, and there may be theft and stupid things like that. But for the most part, the more that I see some of the hearts out here, from Tuvalu to Vanuatu to Fiji, but the Fiji heart and spirit is second to nothing that I've ever seen in my life. Um, and these are the right people to actually start this work with, to align with the Samoans, the Tongans, the folks from Rarotonga and Atutaki. So we look forward to the continuation of being able to link these different, really independent, decentralized cultures together using digital technologies in such a way where they can free themselves. Because I would say that, for instance, Atutaki and Rarotonga are also known as the Cook Islands. Cook is the individual that came across and actually started the process of colonializing these different parts of the world. Colonialism has had its positives and it's had its negatives because of what's happening around the world with centralization. And when I say centralization, I'm talking about governments that are controlling their people and not serving their people, which is another way to say tyranny. Like they're literally, it's a form of mass slavery. I mean, we've fought wars over this, not just physically, like in the U.S., but I believe spiritually. Even before we came, we fought a war over what we can actually do and say, and should we be controlled or should we not be controlled? Should we have choice or not? And even if the choices are wrong, and we're learning from them because we may have made the wrong choice. So the point being is, the spirit is aligned and correct. Is it going fast and smooth? It's amazing to see the linkages. I mean, just, I can't even explain them, primarily because I shouldn't disclose some of them because it's happening real time. But I don't think it could go any faster. I don't think it could go any smoother. Now, my wife may say different, but I am absolutely amazed to see the linkages and the simplicity of how everything is just coming together. So I won't be specific at this time, just from a security standpoint. But in the future, we should be journaling all of this, and I try to do it through photos. So you'll notice that the weekly photos have actually turned into posts on these different countries, and really a little bit of information about them. So kind of pay attention there, because it's not about a culture that we're building within the different clear companies anymore. It's really the world, and it's not just about a company or a group of companies. It's about how we can all come together and work together. So with that being said, we've kind of gone through some of the advancements within different countries. There are other ones that we'll spend more time on. Maybe one. Yeah, so at this time I'll just kind of leave it there. There are some additional advancements that may be there. So and what I mean by that is, let's see if I can just click into one of these. This will actually pull into this information here. Yeah, there's a whole nother, if I were to log in, I wonder if I have another page open. Here, let me see if I do. Yeah, so this is one of the advancements that we've been able to see. So this is a different browser, so it may look a little different. I'm going to go ahead and refresh this because there may be updated content since then. So this is actually a business registry page. So this is an interface that actually can show it. Anyone can basically show it as well. But you can kind of see the start dates, the encryption key, the public key for this particular digital world identity, the status that it is, if there's different entity types, the different websites, record. So this is a unique record. This will actually match this URL. So if you were to go and open up a bank account, depending on your region, that's the type of record that you would need. And then the ability to actually build reputation by updating different things, from maybe articles or certificates, maybe constitutions, maybe your different marks, and then registering different assets. The assets also get their own reputation, and then basically different votes. So this is a public view of an organization that can be created, and this is one of the advancements that basically has happened over the last, well, since we talked last, so the last 2 weeks. So that is available, and you can basically find it here under the search bar. So you can kind of see some of the different ones that are there. I just snagged this first one here. So you can see different ecosystems, whether they're businesses or trusts or organizations or DAOs or countries. You can kind of just see those there. So that's a new advancement that has started to happen. I'll just see if it show you exactly how like one would come up. So you can kind of see how they start working together. So that's a general update, and it's about 30 minutes in. So I'll go ahead and open to general questions or topics. If you have support related questions, there are folks on here. A couple of them, I'm not seeing Terrence, and I don't know what his plans are for the event, but I do know that Wally and some of his crew, they're en route currently. And I do know that, so Wally is not on this call because he's actually in the air. And then L is fielding any kind of calls like what we had earlier from Sam. So it's not support related calls, but any kind of calls around or questions that you may have around the digital world, maybe things that are going on, and just, an individual perspective around, the financing world right now is, or I shouldn't say financing, but the finance world, banking world is having some real shifts right now. We can go through some of those if you'd like. Otherwise, I can continue to provide updates, but I'll go ahead and open the floor to any open questions.
Hi, Michael. It's Beck. How are you going?
Really good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm great. Just a quick question. I remember you saying that there would be an option inside the digital world to hide an organization. Because remember how you built it backwards? And remember how I said that I created a company, but it said the email address didn't register, but I created a company like 20 times?
Yep, I do remember.
And I remember you saying that, and I remember you saying in the future there would be an option there to hide those inside. Is that still going to be an option on the table in the future?
Yeah, you can actually log in and edit them now. So if you've created something like 5 times and you really only needed one, because it's in a cryptographic form, like let's say you did an asset, it continues to create those, and they actually never go away, but you can hide them from a registry, kind of like what we saw here. That can be done. And then you can actually log in and manage your own organization that you've either created or been invited to create, or be a part of managing. So you can, let's say I created a digital business or organization, I could actually invite you to help manage it, and you could then update the information that is there. If you want me to show you, I can kind of pop in and actually show you real time. So I'm just going to grab my Clear phone. By the way, Digital Life and Digital Wallet are 2 apps that have been added to the Google Play Store for any Android phone that has biometric capabilities. For those of you that are not aware, any of the Clear technology links off of the fingerprint that choreographs with a public key and a private key as well. But I'm just going to open up Clear Life here. Hopefully I'm running on the most up-to-date one because I'm only on a 3G connection. So we'll just go ahead and let those updates go. But basically what I'm going to try and do here, okay, that worked. So I'm going to go to the digital login. So I'm going to click scan. And Becca, I'm basically showing you how to log in, and then you'll be able to manage that different business. So I don't think there's a checkbox that'll actually allow you just to straight up delete it, but you can basically remove the content of it. Let me see if I've got to click on something here.
Yeah, I like the new way that you can log in from your phone too. It's really seamless.
Have you been able to do that? Oh, my phone.
Yeah.
I don't even have a connection.
Yeah, I test it every now and then, see what the advancements are. It was really good. Yeah, logged me straight in.
I should have connected this up. I'm literally about as far away from society as you can get, but I should have connected my mobile device up. I could probably do that between the next question. So maybe I'll come back. I'll jump onto Wi-Fi because there's the 3G is not working here. So I went to 0 bars.
Yeah, that's all right. Yeah, I just wanted to ask if there would be an option there to either like hide it or remove it because it was. I don't know why I created 20 times because I only put it in once.
That's okay. It was probably one of the earlier ecosystems, but
Yeah, it was a long time ago. Yeah,
Elle,
I just too eager, like.
No, that's all good. Elle, if you could just take a task on that and make sure Vicaz is aware of a checkbox that enables hiding from registry, even though you need to know that any of these transactions that happen, they'll actually be public. It's blockchains are always 100% public, but the interfaces on how humans can actually see them and read them, those can basically be modified. So what you're asking for is an absolute modification that should already be built into it, so to speak. I'm going to go grab a wireless access point so I can actually log in. Because here I've got to use a username and password, and the thing is forever long. Okay, we'll go ahead and take next questions while I'm trying to log in on this device. It's good to hear from you, by the way.
Yeah, it's great to be here and see everybody. It's been a couple of weeks.
Yeah. Next question, thought, comment, feedback, perspective.
Well, Michael, I think you've mentioned this before. Are we going to have a wallet where we can transfer our digital currencies onto, and will it be like a cold wallet?
There's actually already built into the Clear Wallet and the digital wallet, or Clear Pay and digital pay. They're already built in. There's a checking and savings element of it that you can actually see. So, okay, so now I'm connected. I could actually do that demo as right before. So what I'll do is I'll just show real quick. I'll just light up Clear Pay so you can kind of see. There's two different areas. And what we talk about is I don't know if you can see my video screen here. It may be too small. So what we talk about is...
Yeah, I'm on that page.
Okay, so you can see that. So you see up at the top, it says checking, and then you've got different assets down here, and you can pull up, other assets that you may create. These are what we call real-time checking assets. And if you notice this little button down here, this is actually called savings. So this savings, do you see that?
Where's
it's a little
button? What button did you?
It's a little button down here. So basically this ties to any of the cryptographic assets that we call, humans call crypto, so to speak, whether it's Ether or Bitcoin. So for instance, this is Ether, and you can actually hold Ether inside of this wallet, and it uses a derived key for your Ether ecosystem. You can also do those types of things with Bitcoin, etc. And any of the networks tied to Ether or sub elements. So for instance, a buddy of mine did Gala, that's another asset that you can snag. So those are actually kind of cold storage. And what we would really call cold storage is when you actually have to link another NFC-based device up to it to actually send them. But it's more of a savings-based ecosystem. So again, savings versus checking. And checking is actually something that is real time. So if you want to send something to someone, let's say in Fiji dollars that are digital, and you want to do it in real time, and you don't want to have massive costs for doing it, you don't want to wait around, you don't want to have governments or banks in the middle of it, but you still want to be able to have that value exchange and value store and sovereignty and freedom over your assets.
Right.
That is how you would do it. Now, on the flip side, people would say, hey, Bitcoin is actually how I feel that future is going to be. That's great, and I absolutely agree with them, but from a saving standpoint, because Bitcoin takes about 10 minutes on average to actually do full settlement. And yes, you can use the Lightning Network, and some folks believe or don't believe that basically the Lightning Network centralizes decentralization from my perspective. And when you understand those that actually built it and were behind the scenes in putting it together, they tie directly to Visa, and Visa ties directly to the banks. And I'm not saying that the banks shouldn't do everything they can to try and survive. But, well, it's crazy to kind of see what's happening within the last, well, I guess since we talked last, within the last 2 weeks. You see 4 banks now that have basically gone through massive either collapse or acquisition, or pulling them out of the fire, so to speak, by design. I mean, you've got Credit Suisse that was just pulled out by UBS. UBS was given $100 billion credit line to make a purchase of $2 billion. So they committed $2 billion to buy a whole. Yeah, I believe personally, my personal perspective is some of the most stable, solid, independent organizations in the world were Silicon Valley Bank and Credit Suisse. Those are 2 banks that stood up and actually did what was right and conformed to what they believed the laws were. Now, the laws continue to move around when you talk about asset-based lending and, what's the reserve need to be. It's really the good old boy club when you talk about these banking institutions. If you're part of Chase or JP Morgan, or you even understand how JP Morgan even got in, it's literally, I personally believe it is a world, a decentralized ecosystem. And I'll pull up a slide that'll kind of talk to that. This really represents it right here. So you have secret combinations that are in big tech, big media, big finance, big government, and the government becomes for the people. And some people would say, you know what, Mike, you're just crazy. That's not true. Votes really matter. Votes really count. People aren't voting multiple times. Elections aren't thrown. And, people can have their own perspective. That's what's beautiful. At least where I'm born, it used to exist and used to be solid, and people could have their own views on it. But these secret combinations on the left tie public combinations that we all look at as far as governments. And then those governments have regulations.
Badly, and your screen is gone. It's just your.
Yeah, I can see that too.
Okay.
You can see the screen, okay? I'll try and see if I can pop it back up for you. Does that work better for you?
That's better.
Okay. Basically, what we're talking about is on the left, you've got private secret combinations that have basically taken over government. And on the right, these governmental ecosystems are influenced by things like, there's a new 9-step process on how you actually deploy what they call crypto or decentralized systems. And the first thing is basically don't do anything around linking a fiat currency to a digital currency. And, for governments that actually want to be accountable to their people, they want to be honest with their people, they want to provide the best innovation and the best process that's really cryptographically proven, they'll make the right choices. And from my perspective, what's happening is not just are these warning signs against for other banks to say, hey, if you don't conform, for instance, one of the banks was Silicon Valley Bank, even shut down. They were being acquired, and the same secret combinations basically went to them with crypto. Now, I personally agree that crypto in general, the definition of crypto being a summary word of cryptography, of math, I agree that most assets in crypto are just a big waste. There are people that don't understand decentralization. I mean, I've been to some of these events, and it's for 5, 6, 7 years, but they're actually centralizing decentralization because the business model can give them the certain return on it. And when you change the paradigm and you don't just build for making money for a for-profit or for a shareholder or for some form of gain, everything changes. And that's what true decentralization actually bring for humanity. And I really believe it absolutely not just a true and correct principle, but it's actually something that can save society when we talk about sovereignty, when we talk about freedom. And systems, whether it's standards or code, is actually one of the ways to be able to make those decentralized systems true and correct and actually realized. So, there's an iceberg ahead of us. If you ask me, in the banking system, this is just the start of it. There's a lot of political stuff that's shifting around, but most of you understand my perspective there as well. I won't elaborate on that, but hopefully I touched on your question and at least went through some of it. Did it make sense to you?
Yes, it did. But
awesome.
What's coming? What's coming?
A lot of chaos. I believe that the governments are intended to be dictated as to what systems are the financial systems of the future, and these banks, they don't, like, look at Silicon Valley Bank. 2.7% of its deposits were over the $250,000 limit that the FDIC insurance would cover. So that says, like, literally 97%, 0.3, had liabilities that were above and beyond what the FDIC would insure. Sure. So help me to understand how the FDIC had any logic about taking them over other than control. So we know that it was a control thing. We know that it was a threat thing. When we look at the companies that primarily the venture funds, the equity funds, the public equity, the private equity, the early term days, companies all invested with Silicon Valley Bank. I personally, not personally as an individual, but as companies, we had a
freezing a lot.
Yeah, they are. But the reality is we stopped probably 4 years ago and said that this isn't a part of the future that we choose to be a part of, and we went a different route. But that the side of that bank, as well as Credit Suisse, are some of the best I've ever shoulders with. The laws in Switzerland, the accountability in Switzerland is second to none in the whole world. Maybe Luxembourg might be up there, or Austria. I mean, there's really good accountability within these banks. They basically just changed the rules, and the way that they did it was, it's really simple. It's called inflation. And you've heard us talk about a settlement between China, Taiwan, and the United States of $91 trillion. So when we look at the math here, this data was taken on the right probably 4, maybe 5 years ago. This was way before you started seeing stimulus packages that ended with T's. They usually ended up with B's, so billions, not trillions. And when you start seeing money like 91 trillion that's sprinkled among 3 different countries, it actually becomes a race to see who can spend it most intelligently and fastest, because without crashing. Crashing is, I guess, a perception or a definition, but inflation is actually how they'll be growing. Why? Because it removes debt. You can actually, the United States, if you look at the 2 biggest economies here, the United States was massively in debt to China, primarily because the United States lived way above its means versus the value that it provided, because they gave the responsibility and the tasks over to China, namely to do manufacturing. And the Chinese government was like, hey, we'll invest in manufacturing and we'll build up all the capabilities to build these different widgets, whether it was technology, which is why Taiwan is going to be so key in the future. So pay attention to the US, Taiwan, and China around spending money, and then what that equals to. For instance, Silicon Valley Bank was actually very responsible with them that had on deposit. What it did was it took the money on deposit and actually put it into long-term treasury bonds, and they were in different ecosystems. Some were with university funds, some were with other ecosystems that were just straight treasury bonds. But as the United States continues to increase in the interest rate, the US dollar gets stronger in other parts of the world, but actually the banks inside the US struggle because their deposit ratios get all off whack. So if you've got a treasury bond that you signed up for in 2000, let's say 2017, and your interest rate was prime plus whatever, let's say back then it was 1.2, it was a T-bill, then you would end up, and let's say it was locked up for 10 years. So we're in 2023 now. So they got another 4 years to go before it consummates or settles. And interest rates today, they bumped up, let's say they're 6.5%. So at 1.2, or let's say 1.5%, they're still 4% off from where they needed to be, or even 5%, depending on how the math handles. So they can't come out of these long-term treasury bonds, which is where they actually put the deposits. It's not like they squandered the deposits, but they were targeted because the investments that they were doing were a majority of at least the venture capital side of Silicon Valley Bank was inside of crypto-based assets. And again, 80+% of those crypto-based investments were all centralizing decentralization. So they really didn't understand. They understood crypto and cryptography and math, but they didn't understand decentralization. And so I really see this as a shot across the bow. It's even more than that. It's a direct hit on multiple different stronghold banks in America and in Switzerland. And those are two of the countries, when you really understand the people behind the banking systems. For instance, why is Switzerland actually a safe haven? Why is it a place that you can put funds and not have to have the same kinds of concerns? Is it because they have insurance that says instead of 250,000, we'll insure you up to 250 million? No, it's because they believe that the banks are run with accountable numbers and accountable processes behind the scenes. And for those two to be a part of the first four banks that are targeted, and then I'm not even mentioning what happened with Silicon Valley Bank. So there's different divisions of Silicon Valley Bank. The one out of Europe was actually sold, and you may not have realized this. HSBC, Hong Kong. So HSBC is the Hong Kong and China. It's basically a China bank that was allowed to purchase Silicon Valley Bank within 72 hours of business hours out of, it was not even bankruptcy, but out of FDIC seizure for £1. So think about that. HSBC, a Chinese bank, was allowed by the FDIC and others in the banking regulator world to purchase Silicon Valley Bank out of Europe for £1.
How's that? Wait a minute. Just now? Just last week?
Yeah, this happened about 10 days ago. Yeah.
How is that possible?
Yeah. I mean, what's even crazier is the banking industry would actually give a credit line of $100 billion for the purchase of Credit Suisse when the purchase liability was only $2 billion. I mean, these are absolute games that they're playing, and it's by design. This is all by design. Just like
that's the first thing I said when I heard about SVB and then I said this is all part of the game. Yeah. This is all part of it.
Yep, it really is. And then the next thing that's going to happen, so you asked the question, what's going to happen? It just so happens, hey, here's a comparison. You've got Bitcoin, Ether, Visa, and the digital world. And you can see the different comparisons. So this particular chart is basically looking at $14 billion sent US dollar in equivalents over a 24-hour period. And we're looking at two different things here. We're looking at the time and the cost to send it. Now we're comparing this to things like, SWIFT and ACH and wires, etc. And it blows all those things out of the water. Bitcoin can transfer 14 billion in assets and value, and charge about 2,400 US dollars, and take on average per transaction about 10 minutes, right? Ether is even faster with about 3 minutes, but it costs a little bit more. And then Visa is the comparison. So it jumps up from 2,300 to 26 million to 336 million. And people are fooling themselves if Visa actually truly consummates in real time. It doesn't. It allows you to make the purchase with that signature, but you're basically not, the merchants don't get their funds for 24 to 48 hours if they get them. So with that being said, what's really happening is the banking institutions are going to say, you know what, it's against the law to actually do anything with crypto. So if you're a country and you want this kind of asset or this kind of backing or this type of, debt line, or this, you can't do crypto in your ecosystem unless they're cross-border approved. So if they basically have the ability to do cross-border payments from central digital currencies to others, then they're approved. And that's where they're going to try and say, hey, but for those that aren't understanding, those types of assets, CBDC is a centralized, decentralized technology.
Of course.
So they're saying anything that is truly decentralized, you can't use, or they will say it. They're not saying it today, but they will. For instance, I believe that Ripple will actually have some strength that will come out. It will have the CBDC story underneath it, as will Stellar. And you'll also see other assets that are basically been a thumbs up historically will go to a sideways thumb or a thumbs down, Ethereum based assets, etc. They'll
Michael,
look. Go ahead.
A screenshot of this. Can I get this slide? Is it anywhere in
this is if you go to, let's see if I can pull up a website here.
Your picture is right in the corner, so I'm missing some information. I would really love.
Here, I'll just pull my picture off. Here, we'll just pull my picture off, and you can just do your thing. I don't know which window you're in. Just go ahead and snag it. You can snag it right there. You can grab a screenshot if you want.
Come
yeah, there
back.
You go. That's good. So that's kind of a glimpse into what will be forecasted short term. Now the question is, will banks actually go along with that? And the answer would be probably, because they look at their existence, and if Credit Suisse and Silicon Valley Bank can get shot and literally 48 hours they're done, then all of these bankers will look at it and say, hey, I don't want to go through that. I don't want to
I don't.
So what that means is on-ramp, off-ramps to the digital ecosystem is going to have some struggles, but you have to work with the different countries. And that's why the work that we're doing is so imperative. The ability to actually have different countries that have their own cerebral prowess or their own minds or their own governance or their own ability to actually act. And yeah, some of them are saying, well, I really like doing these deals with debt creation and IMF this and World Bank that. And, a lot of them are just 100% in that world, and they want to just stay safe. And I'm going to use that word safe because that's an indicator where you can kind of see the agenda. So when you dig into cross-border transactions with some of these countries, some of them have their own currency, some of them have their own coins, some of them are pegged to other countries, but some of them actually say, if we had the ability to transact, we would definitely back our country and our currency, whether fiat or physical or digital, all with our assets of what's in our land, over our land, under our land, and in our waters and under our waters. So those are the types of conversations that we're having with these different countries. And they literally are able, because these countries are decentralized. They're little ecosystems. Like the particular island that I'm currently on, this thing didn't even care if COVID was happening. I mean, literally, World War III could actually trigger tomorrow, and they wouldn't worry about food. They'd probably worry about loved ones that are, outside, but COVID didn't even phase these parts of the world. So these parts of the world can actually make decisions from a cabinet or a government or a council. And by the way, that's actually how they work. When we look at these different councils, imagine each one of these different countries here having their own set of councils around how this actually works, and then their own set of voices. And they're cryptographically proven. The technology rolls out, and whether the technology is based upon, identity or citizenship, or maybe the ability to drive or get married or to register certain things, because registration is another form of control. That's a different conversation. Or maybe it's just starting something where you've got, asset management from one generation to another, or from one business to another. Or maybe it's, the payment or land management. So some of these different countries, for instance, I really feel like Fiji is strong on the land management side and some of the things that they do. I feel like there's other organizations that are going to be really good around, asset management. So maybe it comes down to, if, for instance, the Cook Islands or even Switzerland or Panama used to, or Grand Cayman, these are jurisdictions that actually were really good around asset management. So if someone worked a lifetime and they wanted to protect an asset, maybe a house or whatever, they could put it into a trust that was incorporated in the Cook Islands. And the next thing you know, if someone wanted to penetrate that trust, they had to physically go to the Cook Islands, actually live or at least visit, like full on visit. There's only one flight in a week. This was before COVID. Actually, I think it's current. But you can fly in, you can lodge your complaint, and then you can fly out. But you'll be there for at least a week. On each one of them. And so you'd literally have to almost live there if you really wanted to actually file a complaint. Now, all that is a jurisdiction using their decentralized physical location as a competitive advantage in how to actually make money. There are two incomes for that particular country: tourism and asset protection. And when COVID happened, tourism went to zero, like full on zero. No one coming in, no one going out, at least from ships and planes, or at least big ships. There were probably smaller ships that were moving around. But anyways, I'll stop blabbing. I hope you kind of see how different countries that are truly decentralized, that truly can have sovereignty, that aren't afraid to stand up for truth, how they can actually create what they're already used to with chiefs and councils instead of presidents and kings, to basically govern in what we call this Declaration of Unity, and how we all work together to actually have life, love, family, community, and choice. So I hope that this has been a positive update. We're at the hour now. If there's any questions that you feel we haven't touched on that we need to, feel free to bring it up now, and we'll continue to go over it. Otherwise, we'll wrap up. Go ahead.
I just have a question. For ClearWeb, is there any updates on for the computer?
Currently, ClearWeb is actually what we're running right now. So for those of you that are seeing the screen share here, you can kind of see it drop down. It only works for Apple-based iOS fat clients, so to speak. If you want to actually test it and use it, Elle, could you take a task when Tyler is back to request that the ClearOS marketplace, so if we go to clearos.app, not clearos.com, that's the server side of things, but actually inside of here under, it would be, so there's two sides of ClearWeb. One is going to be for the mobile device. So L, the task would be for ClearWeb right here to actually have a desktop version for Macintosh or Apple that could be downloaded. Does that make sense? You need
Yes.
Okay, so Al, if you can just give me a hands up or a thumbs up or something, that would be great. So this is basically just the web, clear web for mobile. Got it. Okay. So you would basically have another one in that would pop in here for desktop. So, and then that task would also tie into another web page it's not run off the database, so we're going to have to get another engineer involved. So anyhow, That's a good question, and you need to know that it's still in beta. For instance, some of the extensions, they don't work correctly. So, for instance, I use some extensions that just make me very productive inside of the browser. I can't even do it inside of it. So, it's still definitely an alpha stage. It's not even in the beta stage, but you're welcome to use it. I'm actually streaming this call on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, all real time, and on 3 different channels from the digital world, from the town hall, as well as the Clear United Ripple Effect. So that's crazy tech, and it's all run off of Clear Web. So some people would say that's not alpha technology that's doing that, but I just want to set the right expectation, if you're going to do it. And then for those that are not aware, whenever you use, now, not a client based on the, your Mac side, but when you use a application that's a Clear based application. So if we come back over here, if you ever bump into any problems, what you do is you just shake your phone. So you kind of vigorously shake it, and it'll pop up and say, submit a support ticket. You can either record, so you can literally take a video of what happened, and it sends it right into support. So just know that we're continuing to make massive perfections, particularly right now. The big thing is around digital life, and it's around digital wallet or digital payments, and then how that actually relates to different countries and how they have different stores that would do different checkouts. So for instance, Fiji Pay is accepted in these stores. Vanuatu Pay is accepted in these stores. Tuvalu Pay is accepted in these stores. And they're different assets that basically run inside of it. So I'll stop blabbing, but hopefully I've answered your question. These have been really good questions, and I appreciate you showing up every single week, even when I didn't last time, which is actually the 3rd time in coming up on not 3 years, probably over 2.5 years. But if you want updates, or if you want kind of notices, just make sure you're logged into Clear United and you've got the notification stuff clicked. So we'll do our best to try and get you as many updates there. And for those of you that are aware, we do make this a massive priority, as I know that I get asked a lot of questions during the week on kind of what's going on, and especially when certain headlines hit. Today is Wednesday where I'm at, Tuesday in the U.S., and our some people call him former, but President Trump was basically supposed to be arrested today, which I think there's a lot of just different, you got smoke and mirrors that are going around all over the place. But, is he a perfect guy? No. Has he done more for the United States of America than most presidents? Absolutely, yes. Than all of them combined? Some people would argue with that. But I would definitely say he's added value while he's existed here on Earth. And I'm grateful for the work that he's done, and for all of those that are around him that put up with all the garbage and the attacks. But to be honest with you, these attacks are minuscule compared to what we're talking about spiritually, as well as what war could bring to humanity. So please, let's just keep things in perspective and keep loving one another, keep caring about one another. And while we wrap up here, I'm gonna play this video, particularly from, no, it's none of these, so I'll have to just jump back over here. Simon Kofi, I've really, it's weird for men to talk about having love for another man, but I really respect this man on multiple levels. He's a solid leader, even though he's young in years. He has a warrior built into him, and most in the Pacific do. The island that we're on, we were driving in late last night, 11 hours worth of travel just yesterday, and I asked this gentleman, do you still see the warrior in some of these people? He's like, Mike, it was just a couple decades ago, we're eating people, we're killing them and eating them. But when I look at these people now, it's like they're the most humble, kind. Their hearts are, and their smiles are as full as I've ever seen on this earth. And I've been around the earth 3 separate times. I know I'm still young, but they're just such good people. Same thing with Indians. But anyways, I'll stop blabbing. But let's go ahead and hear from Simon before we wrap up. And hopefully you can hear this. If you can't, just let me know and I'll wrap up. But I think some of you will be able to. Here we go.
Your Excellencies, honored guests, ladies and gentlemen, Talofa and warm Pacific greetings from Tuvalu. Last year, I addressed this August Assembly proclaiming that we must take bold and alternative action today to secure tomorrow. I explained that although we need global collaboration to end the climate crisis, we in the Pacific would not sit idly by and wait for the world to act. Today, I speak again from my country, from a small islet that is likely to be one of the first spots in Tuvalu to be submerged by rising sea levels. Since COP26, the world has not acted, and so we in the Pacific have had to act. We have seen temperature rise projections remain well above 1.5 degrees Celsius, foretelling the imminent disappearance of islets like this one. We have had to take our own precautionary steps with the Future Now project. As our land disappears, we have no choice but to become the world's first digital nation. Our land, our ocean, our culture are the most precious assets of our people. And to keep them safe from harm, no matter what happens in the physical world, we'll move them to the cloud. Islands like this one won't survive rapid temperature increases, rising sea levels, and droughts, so we'll recreate them virtually. Piece by piece, we'll preserve.
This is coming to you over Saturday.
Our country, provide solace to our people, and remind our children and our grandchildren what our home once was.
I'm going to pause it here and just kind of give you some context. So this is a small little island, and there's many islands that make up Tuvalu. But both Simon and I walked on this same island, just us, and had the opportunity to just kind of not just reflect on what this really means, because it's bigger than just a digital nation or a digital island or solving as water rises. It's the ability to actually allow people, individuals, through technology, the ability to gain their own identity back. Not just privacy and sovereignty, but who they are. And that's one of the biggest lessons that I'm personally learning is, who are these people? Where is this location? Like when I was out there, I took a little motorbike and I drove from one side of the island to another side. It didn't take very long, but I kept in my mind saying, wow, what is this? Where is this? Like they were taking land like right off of my room. So Simon got me a room, it was actually water a year or two before. Just before COVID, they basically turned water into where my room was. And then next to that, they were doing the same thing. If you want to kind of see how this works, I don't know if I might not be logged in here. Yeah, I'm not logged in here. So, but for those of you that are connected or following on Facebook, I will do posts on these different countries so you can kind of get to see them closer up, because they're definitely, through learning and growing and seeing cultures from others' perspectives, we can have a respect for it. We can have a respect for one another. We can have a respect and even love for someone that doesn't have the same dialect or the same skin tone or the same affluency. We're all the same when it all comes down to it. We're all going to take our last breath physically. But what we feel and do spiritually, especially, like as I talked to his wife, and you can tell a lot by a man from his wife. Probably wouldn't tell a lot about me from my wife. It wouldn't be positive, at least not today. But Simon's wife, it wouldn't be true. I can't say that, but I'm just a little hard on myself when it comes to that, because I always try and do better when it comes to serving others, especially a significant other that we commit to time and eternity with. But here's to the point. I won't talk about that. Here's to the point. Simon's wife gauged his progress based upon his spirit. And for me, that was telling. This is a man that's in politics that is being measured on his spirit. and his spirituality and his connectedness. And I won't talk religion, I won't talk books, but I can tell you that this man is driven by the right principles. And that's one of the reasons why we look and we've made such an investment to serve this country and to serve this people. Are they all perfect? No. I went to the jail. I saw people inside a jail. One dude, he just didn't smile at people. But are they doing bad stuff? Are they killing people? No. Do we all have tendencies there? All I would say is look at what's happening in the big picture. Look at what is happening with oppression and control, and even what's happened over the years when we talk about colonialism. Has that been all positive for people? And when we talk about financial systems with controllable money that's digital, we won't be free. These future generations won't be free. So I'll let Simon wrap up here, but I just want to give you a context as to where this was, and not only that, but he's an amazing skin diver. So he goes down with these little spear guns and caught 4 or 5 fish within 30 minutes, and we cooked them up and ate them. And it's no wonder how they can literally survive with that and coconut and crazy stuff. But again, I'll stop blabbing and let him wrap up. Hopefully the connection stays strong. And that's another thing, is these things all run off a satellite. So as these connections go to these different decentralized parts of the world where they haven't had the ability to connect in the digital ecosystem, I think we're going to see some compelling events that we've never seen before. In other words, it's a perfect storm, but here we go.
This is also a matter of sovereignty. We in Tuvalu are taking bold steps to ensure that our statehood and our maritime boundaries are permanently maintained, despite extreme land loss due to climate change and sea level rise. Our digital nation will provide an online presence that can replace our physical presence and allow us to continue to function as a state. We have been working on these initiatives for the past year, building our capacity to retain and preserve our nation and the unity of our people, even as climate change spirals out of control. Global action must be taken to provide the best case scenario, but we in the Pacific are planning and preparing for a worst case scenario. We need to be able to secure our statehood, our maritime boundaries, and our endowments, no matter what happens in the future. The world's inaction has led our Pacific region to take greater action and forge our own path as leaders on the international stage. But our action alone cannot stop.
I'll go ahead and stop that. But I do want to make sure that you understand when he talks about maritime boundaries, imagine in this million square kilometers of ocean that Tuvalu makes up, imagine different countries coming in and fishing, or different companies coming in and fishing. Maybe they're going after tuna, maybe they're going after octopus, whatever. How do you actually know who's who and how the value exchange is happening? Just put that out there. And that's one example of a use case that can actually be realized. And it's not just in Tuvalu, but Tuvalu is one country out of, 17, 18 countries in this part of the world, the Pacific. The whole Pacific is made up of 165 million square kilometers. And Tuvalu represents one of the 165. So imagine how these different isles of the sea can actually lock arms and actually not only, right here he's talking about digitizing a island, which by the way, we literally stood right there. The reason that's insignificant is because it's in the middle of nowhere. Like we took a boat trip out there. I don't know, it was a whole day trip, so to speak. But imagine supply chain meets transparent transactions. So you can know from a boat's transponder where they are and if they've actually paid that day to fish. That simple. And then if they did, they basically tag what was the fishing day, what was the location, And then from a QR code, someone can actually see, is this genuine tuna from the Pacific? Or did this come from some dirty commercial lane in some other part of the world? I won't be specific with countries. But I'll use an example. So 6 or 7 years ago, we were using the blockchain to identify Manuka honey out of New Zealand because there was 3 to 4 times of it that was sold into just China. Just China alone, 3 to 4 times the amount of Manuka honey that New Zealand created was supposedly shipped into these other countries. We're talking about stopping fraud and corruption and lies, because a QR code scan can actually prove where it was made, when it was shipped. Oh, you can't, when people talk about blockchain, which by the way, Bitcoin was not the first one, 2008, 2009. It goes all the way back to the 70s, 72, where literally timestamps were used with multiple different systems that say this occurred and it's cryptographically proven. So it's not like this is just getting underway, but the ability to intelligently organize technology and innovation for the betterment of humanity, namely governments, to be able to be accountable to their citizens. And when we talk about it, for instance, anyone who's listening to this, you're hearing it digitally because you're not physically with me. You know, there's no one in this room that's physically with me today. Everyone will hear it digitally. What governs that? Is it just me to say certain people have permissions to see this and certain people have permissions to duplicate it, or you can take it from an analog? My point is the digital ecosystem has no governance. This declaration represents what can actually be a future governance for humanity as it relates to how we operate in a digital ecosystem. And this is not just something that is just, thrown out there. This is very, very well articulated, very well, researched, very well thought through. And many people have aligned with this, not just like the Declaration of Independence, where there are 54 people that signed it, which, well, I won't be specific there. Anyhow, thank you for your time, for your attention, for your love, and for your prayers. We'll sign off on March 21st, 2023, and we'll see you next week, assuming we have internet access from the event. For instance, and by the way, for those that still want to go, you can still sign up for this event. We're at the 21st right now. This thing starts in 1 week from today. So the 28th of March, it sets sail. This is a 15-day cruise. It starts out of Sydney, Australia. I know that there have been massive concerns around vaccinations, and I raise my hand with you. But at the same time, we won't live in fear. We will operate and live through life. And I even believe we will leverage some of these centralized controls that have played these games to basically allow people and organizations and companies and countries to find truth and then use it. But if you want to join us for this event, you're welcome to. Now's the time. You basically just click here, and you can connect with whether it's Clear or ETH or BTC or even Native. If you don't have Native or you're not aware of it, we can actually focus a call around that too. So, but appreciate your time and for the opportunity to serve and love, and we'll see you next week, unless there's no internet connection from where we're going. We'll talk to you later. Signing off.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Michael.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Michael.
Thanks, Michael. Bye.
Goes two ways.
Bye.